All right, so here we are, new year, new albums, and this is the first real weekend that we've had with new material, and we kind of got a good 1-2 punch. So we're gonna dive into some of these. I may have already talked about one, depending on how I upload these, but I'm gonna talk about this one right here. Let's do this.
Within the living tree, sing as one, beneath the eye of the sun.
At the Edge of Light by Steve Hackett. So, for those of you not in the know, I can't imagine you not being, he was the ex-Genesis lead guitarist after Anthony Phillips. He covered all the material from Genesis between Nursery Crimes all the way to Wind and Wuthering. And even during Genesis, he had his own side project of just straight up Steve Hackett. I believe he put out 2 albums while he was still with the group. Pretty much since then, he's been consistently putting out materials, meaning that this is the 26th full-length studio recording, and that's not even counting all the live material that he's also done. The album's pretty much right from Beyond the Shrouded Horizon onward, his 2011. They haven't really deviated too far from the mean in terms of like the sound. Like in some respects it sounds like he's found where he's very comfortable playing in, and he's kind of just stuck there, and where most of the time I would kind of discredit and not really like when an artist does that. I don't really like when an artist stagnates, but in this sense, he hasn't so much stagnated as he's just found the style that he really loves to play in, and he's just exploring that territory. So he's not really moving too far outside of the box in that sense, and from there he's kind of put out Wolflight, The Night Siren, and now we have here. Between all that, he put out Genesis Revisited 2, which was actually quite nice. I really enjoyed that work. But Wolflight is probably my favorite out of the whole bunch, out of these 4 albums that he's kind of put out. And it all very sounds like this very darkish, guitar-led pieces. There are moments where there's a lot of bright lights, but for the most part, it feels very much like it's either the dusk or the dawn, where it's very dark, but you still have like that little bit of a brightness along the horizon. And you actually feel this within a lot of the titles of the actual albums that you see as well, like Beyond the Shrouded Horizon, Wolflight, The Night Siren, and even now At the Edge of Light. Like, it depicts exactly the type of music that we're going to get into because of the images that come throughout it. And what I really particularly like about this particular piece of At the Edge of Light are the darker moments. Within the first track of Fallen Walls and Pedestals, really great way of setting up this album. We have a lot more of that darker undertones that's basically sweeping us right into the album itself. Like, it starts off with just a little bit of a dash of music, and then bam, we're right into it. And this is a really great way of opening it up because it doesn't really give us enough time to just kind of like get comfortable. It's just like, nope, we're here, bam. And it's a very short track that leads us straight into Beasts in Our Time. And this carries that kind of a motif of being a little bit more on the darker side. We do have a little bit more of the light kind of sprinkling through here and there. Got this very harsh marching rhythm that's going throughout the track. It's that dun 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 dun. So you got like that really big rhythm going on. I like the smattering of instruments that we have on here. There's a piece where there's a really nice saxophone movement on there, and the whole thing is very dark in that sense. And the one thing that I will comment on this album that wasn't seen within the past couple of albums were a lot more of those very, not quite poppy, but kind of like joyful, like the word that I want to use for Under the Eyes of the Sun is juvenile, but not in like a demeaning sense or in a an accusational sense, more in a, like, it's got the innocence, it's got the kind of fresh and new take on things. It's very whimsical in that sense as well. There's a lot of great uplifting moments. That kind of caught me a little bit off guard, especially when it's surrounded by so many darker moments. But I do like that transitions and that dichotomy here, which then we go into the Underground Railroad, and I particularly like the Underground Railroad. I like how fast the guitar work is on there. It feels very much like that early rock and roll, very much like the Working on the Railroad kind of tracks, like the early 30s rock. It even has like that vocalizations that's very similar to that. Like the singer is very much like that I've been working on a railroad type of a song. And I really kind of like that, especially with the connotations of the Underground Railroad itself. And that music style of that picking guitar work, especially when that bass line comes in there, which is very fast. It feels very driven, which again, plays around with that railroad motif. Thought that was a really great work. the best way I can put this track of These Golden Wings is like it's the most Steve Hackett of songs that we've got this far, because it is the longest track. It goes through a lot of ebbs and flows. We have those high strings that are playing throughout. We've got that really dark overtones that we have. So there wasn't a whole lot of like surprises within this track. There wasn't a whole lot of like new territory that we have on there, but it's probably also my favorite track on this because of a lot of that. Like, he did master a lot of these techniques. He did master a lot of those ebbing and flowing of that, and I thought it was a really great way of showcasing it. After this track, a lot of those tracks that follow up with this, they don't really cover a whole lot of new ground, and I just kind of keep it on because there's no low point as well within those tracks, but I don't really feel all that excited about them. Like Shadow and Flame is a very good track in that kind of a sense. It's the one that follows up those Golden Wings. It has that kind of Arabic feel to it. You feel that within it. Sounds like a sitar that's kind of in the background. You have small cymbals, I almost said thimbles, cymbals that are playing throughout, and you have that kind of eerie atmosphere that's going through that as well. Hungry Years, the one that comes up after that, is probably the low point for me. Hungry Years is definitely the low point because it is very accessible, very poppy as well, and it just doesn't really do anything for me. It feels very much like a radio single, which is a little bit odd for Steve to do, especially now, unless like he was just kind of having fun, and I guess those Hungry Years do have that. And then we have the last three tracks, Descent, Conflict, and Peace, and I feel like these three do blend directly into one another. Like Descent is essentially the same rhythm style that Mars has from the Planet Suite, the classical suite, where it's just that dun 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 dun. And unfortunately, it doesn't really build to anything except for Conflict, and Conflict is really, really short, really, really quick. And it's just kind of like that build up towards it. But I feel like Descent being at 4 minutes and 20 seconds, and then Conflict, like it builds, but it doesn't really build anything within Descent. And then Conflict is just kind of there, and it's that, again, that quintessential orchestration of music that Steven likes to do with the strings, with the horns. It does feel very similar to what we've already heard. And Peace is a very strange way to end the album. Like, the song itself is fine. It doesn't feel like a closing track. Like, I was hoping for the last, say, maybe 2 minutes of this to really play it out in some way, shape, or form. But it unfortunately doesn't. It just kind of ends. And so when I was listening to this for the first handful of times, I was expecting this album to continue after Peace, but it didn't. And I was sitting there for like almost a full 30 or 40 seconds being like, okay, when's that next song happening? But there wasn't any next song. So Peace was a very strange way to end it. Even though thematically it works, that end of Peace, I just wanted a little bit more of a punctuation in the ending there. But overall, this album is still a really great time. It's a quintessential Steve Hackett new release that we've had within the 2010s. It doesn't really deviate too far from the mean, but at the same time, it never really bores me. It never really makes me want to turn it off or change it to something different. It's always engaging and very exciting for me as well. This is an album that I would easily download. Have it on my computer, have it in my collection virtually. Probably one I wouldn't run out to pick up though. And that's pretty much about it. That's it for At the Edge of Light by Steve Hackett. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What's an album from Steve Hackett that you've really, really enjoyed within his later part of his discography? Let me know all that by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.
Journeys of the dam sail through underneath a merciless moon, gathering clouds.